Let's just vote
I have
the
the
6th.
6th, but I didn't.
Yeah, so we should, on the 6th, vote, right?
Yeah.
Vote the 6th.
Yeah, the only thing on the 6th that I saw was that we needed to fill in one blank with, I believe it was Dave's name. Can't remember.
Did no one get a copy?
I didn't. What's, no, what's you sent was the 6th and
The
the
agenda.
agenda for tonight.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't get the 26th.
So we're talking about the 6th.
Correct.
Oh, the 6th then?
Which would have been the last waterway meeting.
No, it was the first of the month.
Which them, right.
Anybody have those printed out or not?
I have a copy
The
here.
6th?
Yeah,
He is mine now.
pretty sure I saw it.
Okay.
Where was the blank?
Maybe the second or third page was a blank where it didn't have your name.
I'll go backwards, you go forwards.
That could be, I was trying to fill in some of the spaces.
Beginning of a paragraph.
Yeah.
There was one correction on this. I said over 2,000 volts. I think I said estimated.
Estimate.
Guesstimate.
That's one of them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you know who that was, waterway commission member?
Mentions a channel marker, North River.
That's not you, like, something you would ask Mike.
It wouldn't be.
I think it's Mike.
Or it might be Keith.
though, yeah. North River to the island is the target area, priority will be the dangerous areas. No, it was either.
Yeah, here, does anyone know what that would have been?
Which page is that? Third page?
24.
Actually, Don.
It might have been me, yeah.
Does it, Brian?
I thought there was one other, but maybe that was a standard book. Other than that, everything was great. No.
Waterways Commission.
There's something where I wasn't here. I don't think I was here. I said I was here.
Okay, do you want to accept those or want to review them again?
No, let's accept it.
A motion? I'll make a motion to accept.
Second.
Yes, sir.
Confuse the heck out of me.
Okay,
And I don't think I was at this meeting, Dave Friedman. I'm pretty sure I was.
You were not,
Yeah.
and I didn't know who was and who wasn't, so.
So I'm listed as it.
All right, so I'll take you off,
Thanks.
and I'll send that update to Brandon.
Are you at this meeting?
Only in
Sure,
spirit.
Not sure. Hasn't been posted.
okay, we don't have any open remarks, so go right to Stephen, Harbor Master's report.
Our master's report. Well, we had a meeting last week. We talked about the improvements and the ongoing rehabilitation of the Cole Parkway Marina. Not a lot has happened between last week and this week. We are, still moving forward with the rehabilitation project. If anybody has any specific questions, ask me, concerns about anything that's going on. We did have the nor'easter or the tropical storm. We didn't have any issues during that. We went out and checked the boats daily, several times a day. We secured a few different boats that were starting to wear through their pendants. We had one boat break a dock line at the marina. We secured that. We contacted all the owners that we had issues with.
I don't know what you guys felt, and I don't think you had anything, because I think it was a bid situation, and I've met maybe 3 or 4 engineers, but I was really impressed with that guy that we have as an engineer on the Cole Parkway project. He seemed like just, most engineers are not as personable and agreeable as that guy. It's probably easy to work with, I would think. Just starting to work with him.
We just graded them, we graded all of them according to their proposal, and we reviewed their proposals, and that's how we selected
Yeah,
it.
he seemed pretty good.
Yeah, he did. I thought he seemed like he was on top of every question that came up. He had a pretty quick answer for it, seemed to know everything that was going on, so.
Sure, so I think BH did a great job. As someone who's been involved in a lot of RFPs, the only area that I have a high degree of concern, and I know Dave, you may have mentioned it during it, was the schedule, I think, is so aggressive that it's going to end up costing the town money to try to procure the materials early. or to expect that someone would have availability a month later to start this project, that they won't have other things planned out. So I'm sure that'll come as it may when we get there, but this schedule is, I think, aggressive was one word that was used. I think realistic is a better word. Not anything on your side, I'm just saying the way it rolls out. It's either gonna cost the town money to bring the equipment in or quicker, or to have somebody available. Just my 2 cents on it.
Just so everybody knows, we received a grant for this. That grant expires
In the fiscal year?
July 1st next year. July 1st of 18, that grant expires.
So it's
So-
likely we won't have it if we don't get the permits in place.
If we push it off and just push the whole project off until we get the permits in place, and we go back to Seaport and they say, what have you done? Well, we didn't do anything because we're waiting for the permits. We haven't, our timetable is next fall.
So Stephen, do we absolutely lose the money, or is there?
No, you have to go back to them, but you have to go back to them with a good reason. You can't say, well, we didn't want to do anything until we
No,
got
I'm
the
not saying we
permits.
wouldn't do anything, but
We have to
we
have-
have the permits and we have the contractor set to begin the operations in October.
When I
Is that a good
submitted,
story?
for the grant,
Yeah?
and when they asked us for the timetable had to be within that year, this is what we submitted for. That's why it's there.
But they know the realism of it, I would think, of the permitting process.
And we are going to do our best to stay on task and to our deadlines.
How long did they give us to spend the money? Just a year?
July 1st,
So they
2018.
gave us one full year cycle to
Yeah.
spend?
So I think you move ahead as quick as you can here, right? And the only thing that looks like you could really hang it up that I saw was really the permit stuff, right?
Correct.
The permit stuff goes
Correct.
through as scheduled, right? Then they get the bids out on time, the bids back in time and reviewed and awarded, right? And I don't think it's gonna cost the town any additional monies to do it. But at some point, you're right, you might have to say, hey, we have to stop.
Because of the marina's opening or something, and then I have a reason to go back to say to them,
Right.
we did our best to stay on task,
Yeah.
stay on schedule. If I go back to them and say, we just felt that we're gonna wait and try to save the town some money.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying to issue the bidding on February 1st and have somebody begin on March 1st. That's 28 days. That just seems to
We're
be...
gonna do our best. to
I'm not
stay
saying
on
that we
task.
shouldn't do that. I'm just saying that that seems to be a pretty tight schedule, and that's where I think you would pay if you had to advance to expedite materials, number one, or the assumption that somebody doesn't have work already lined up in March and April,
Mhm.
30 days, 28 days later. I mean,
Yeah.
if I was building a house and issued bids to a contractor to expect that they would be available 28 days later to start,
Right,
I don't know if it's totally realistic.
Or they bid high.
Or they bid high, and they push the other guys back.
yeah.
Right. Well, the other thing is.
They also know that all these projects are coming out of the ground.
Right.
Yeah.
The other issue is weather and the
It could
severity
be
of
April,
winter,
right.
which is what, I think it
Changes
was
things.
3 years ago, you couldn't get a crane or a
Correct.
barge or anybody. So that's a variable that you can't predict.
Sure.
In which case, the bid would be approved and awarded, but he couldn't start anyway till the following season.
But that is a degree of reasonableness that why.
And Stephen, I'm not saying that we shouldn't consider the plan as it is. I'm just saying it's
I think
very
we have
aggressive.
to consider it.
No, we do, but it's very aggressive. That's all I just want to go on record.
If you remember back to, good point, Mike, if you remember back to 2015, where I think where a lot of marinas did lose pilings, right? They lost a lot of pilings
Emergency
around,
repair,
and they were pretty much able to come in and get everything kind of repiled, right at the beginning of the season, so most places open up.
But that's not a permitting issue, that's just, hey, we need to replace this
Yeah,
pipe.
but
True,
That, we
yeah.
would have the permits.
Right.
No, we
Is
have.
what we are saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
If we
it's
have.
similar.
Most of those people probably didn't know they were losing pilings till.
How long a project, I think, I mean, I'm not sure if you're experienced there, but does anybody know how long this would take to do?
I don't know.
Depends how they resource it, I guess.
Yeah.
Is it a
Mike.
month project?
40 pilings.
Mike, how many days do you think?
100 pilings or something?
To dry the pilings, you're looking at about 3 hours, 2 or 3 hours of piling. To do the actual framework and everything you guys were talking about, that's a lot of time. I mean, I don't know, I mean,
You mean cutting into the cut?
coming in, cutting in, attaching all that steel work and everything.
60 days, Mike? April, May?
All of 2 or 3 months,
March.
depending on how many people you have, you know, it's, cause I mean, for me, just looking at that thing from what I saw from up here, I mean, his piling placement looks like it goes right over all the electrical wires too. Is it on the same side as the,
No.
it's not, it's on the opposite side of the,
The electrical wires go down the center.
oh, they're not center, okay, I didn't know that, okay. So that, I mean, you gotta cut open all that decking, you know, his swing gate that he had, that's gotta be designed and built.
Yep.
You know, there's a lot of prep work that has to be done before you even start doing the actual work there. And I mean, you gotta call up a piling company, I don't know, you know, if you guys are gonna go with fiberglass or you're gonna go with steel, there's a lot of lead time, I think, needed with fiberglass or steel and even wood too. And if you're gonna put, how many pilings did you say, like 40 or 50 pilings? Yeah, they count,
Between 40 and 50.
yeah, 40 or 50 pilings. I mean, they had, you know, the local distributor had to bring in a whole truckload of pilings just for that job. I mean, you're looking at it all, you'd be lucky to do it in 2 months. Lucky.
Because they have a lot in March and April to do the actual construction. And 15 days in May, when the actual season would open. He seemed very comfortable with the time frame. I mean, everybody else seems to think it's pretty aggressive, but I think we'll probably know by the end of this month what final plans, right?
My only suggestion too is I would ask them, and it might screw up things, if you can say, hey, can we put in half the pilings now and do half in the fall? Just my own interjection.
Does that work with half the marina being on blocks? Is that
No, you gotta do, there's no pilings and blocks, it's either pilings or blocks.
So what did you just say, half the pilings?
Well, you have to pull out, I mean, if you can get away with, say you have the marina on 20 pilings, if the engineer thinks that's a good idea, a feasible idea, you can do that and then come in and do more pilings later on.
I would say, as an alternative to that, we'd probably look first at, one, maybe trying to pre-order the pilings against the project, right? If we're at a point where it's ready to do that.
It has to be the contractor. The contractor was the pilings, not the town.
Well, the contractor could, you know, you could work with the supplier of the pilings to order some, right? And then
Oh, yeah.
turn that over to the contractor when it happens. And then two, I would say, always put all the pilings in up front, even if you had to, a lot of that work, like you mentioned, is really cutting those docks and kind of put it in, maybe chaining, right? Keeping them on the exterior of it, chaining it until you can actually get someone to cut them out and do it while it's in the water, right?
And it's most of the prep work and actually putting in the actual pilings. And I don't know if you couldn't chain them because they wouldn't be in the right spot.
That's right.
I see Brian's, I know, they wouldn't be in the right spot if you just put a hoop around it on the outside.
Well, you can hoop it too, right?
My 2 cents. I mean, yeah, you can hoop it, but it's not gonna be,
Yeah.
like you guys said, you know, that one person who has that one float's gonna go, oh geez, I lost a foot and a half of my float because, you know, there's a hoop and
Yeah.
my swim classroom's gonna hit.
Don't they normally put the floats in place and they drive the piles with the floats in place? So that they get them exactly.
You
where they
put the floats in place, you tie the barge up, you do one piling here, you do one piling at where Easy Rider's old dock used to be, you do 2 pilings on the main floats, you jump down, you do 2 or 3 in P-Town, and then you fill in the rest.
That's what I thought.
That's how I would personally do it. And then you go in and you fill in all the other stuff. But if you got the main floats done, and you got, say, a couple in P-Town done, and a couple, you know, on the front, if you got, like I said, if you got 20 pilings in,
Yeah.
depending on what you went with, I mean, look at how many pilings this place is being held by.
Well, they're engineering it for the amount of pilings. I don't think it'd be prudent to put in less pilings and put the
No,
marina
well,
in and let all the weight get in there. You could have a storm in May and screw things up. I mean, it could happen. Well, we'll see. I mean, certainly in the next month, we'll have a report back to see how the
Yeah.
permitting's going.
Right.
I would assume next month.
Okay, we kind of jumped ahead. Do you have anything else, Steve?
No, do you want me to go back to old business, or?
We haven't Yeah, we got the whole business, yeah, we kind of jumped ahead to the.
We're at the adjournment now, I think. Just fine with me.
Yeah.
Hey, Mike,
Yes,
since we're using your expertise here.
using my input as a person who's a person of input.
Exactly. Not holding you to anything. I know you lose a little space if you use hoops.
Yep.
But in most of the jobs that you've done, have you used hoops or have you driven through the flows?
I've used hoops and chains in most of the stuff I've done. 75% of stuff I've done is residential. So it's one float, one boat, 3 or 4 pilings. You go down to Brewers, down in Plymouth, and the people in B-Town, they go right through the middle of the floats.
Okay.
Another thing too is, I don't know where his placement on the floats is, but if you're gonna take out a tub, how the heck can you get a tub out of there? You gotta have the crane come over, pick it up, take the tub out, now you've lost that flotation. So, I mean.
I think he's planning on going in between the floats, but
Yeah,
you
like
know
I said,
that
I didn't see it close up, so I don't know, but like I said, hoops are gonna take away from that person. I think Steven said before, that one person's gonna come down and go, hey, my slip just used to have, 33 feet, now I got 31 and a half feet or whatever, so.
I just don't know how much those floats are gonna take us cutting them apart.
We had some questions on the main floats, because the main floats have racked and done a couple of things, and, I don't know.
Yeah, so while we're talking, the main floats would be, my concern is that should be somehow incorporated into the project on the front side, because cutting those main floats that are already in tough shape, right, they're already cupped, they appear to have, the guys that repaired them this summer said that there was a lot of punky wood on the inside, right, that they had to sister up to.
Well, maybe something I can put on the capital plan, we could just buy some floats.
Yeah, maybe for the first part of it there, right?
Yeah.
This
I'm
side.
I'm doing the capital plan now, so it would
Yeah.
just be a capital plan item.
Right, and then those ones would be built with the gates already built into it, right, so it might expedite that part of the.
Yeah, but he wouldn't have those for May, I don't think, would he?
Yeah,
Because his capital plan is for next July.
or thereafter.
Actually, on the enterprise fund, I believe we can, if it's something that's on capital, like with the vote last year, I was able to buy it prior to July 1st.
I'll have to check on that. Because this
Because
is,
because it's an enterprise fund,
Yeah.
the money's already in the account.
Right, yeah. It's something to look into, I guess, right?
Well, this is probably something we should take a look at after we get back his field work at the end of this month. Probably was a much better idea. Steve?
can I ask another question about, you might have talked about it on the 6th, I didn't see it when I quickly looked at the minutes, but, so where are we on the moorings issued, number of moorings issued?
On the 6th?
No, I don't think, I wasn't at the last meeting, I don't think it got talked about.
See,
I think we
we
said-
said, how many,
we said there was
of the 80 that we started the season with, how many do we issue?
A little over 80. and
We're getting way out of order here. I mean, as
I
far
know.
as
No, this is a
doing-
harbor master report, right?
Well, we have mooring banding results later on, if you want to grab it, and that I think would be more appropriate. We have a guest tonight, and I don't want to keep him here any later than it has to be. Jason Berger from Coastal Zone. Brian, you want to introduce him?
We're gonna kick right into that, correct?
I think we should. We don't want to
Okay.
keep Jason up all night, do we?
No, that's good, I mean, I'm up for a long meeting, but, if you want to front load me, that's good too.
Okay, so Jason obviously was one of the key contributors to the existing harbor management plan that was issued back in 2011. We've had Professor Jack Wigan talk to us about possibly updating it. I've met with Jason offsite and asked for his opinion, because there's some areas in this that obviously we as a group couldn't do without a problem. The planning, the key issues, the objectives, what we've accomplished so far, but there's other things that encompass either regulatory issues, Chapter 91, et cetera, which is certainly outside the purview of my expertise. So I sat down and talked with Jason about the process and his thoughts, and instead of me regurgitating that meeting, I'd like to turn it over to Jason and ask for some of his thoughts on the existing plan the need to update it, and if so, a process to do it.
Sure. Maybe if I can back up for a second. Let's see, I work for the Office of Coastal Zone Management. We are an office under the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs. We work with communities largely on policy and management issues ranging from everything from water quality, coastal hazards, to port and harbor planning. I'm the regional coordinator of my region. It goes from Hingham all the way down to Plymouth. My office is actually up in the Sanctuary building. I've been doing this for probably around 15, 17 years now. Before that, I had a couple sort of water-related careers. I was in the Coast Guard for a number of years doing search and rescue, drug interdiction, vessel boardings. I also held a 100 gross ton near coastal license and ran boats for a living, so I have very much a feel for the waterfront. With regard to the harbor management plan, that was very much, as I'm sure Howie will attest, very much a group effort. It was done internally, in-house, by the Waterways Commission at that time. And I thought it was a good effort, and a good report came out of it. A harbor management plan, like any other planning document, is hopefully a living document that will guide people's activities, practices, and sort of chart their path forward. And it allows the community to sort of develop the goals and vision for a resource area or a planning area. And every once in a while, I would suggest that it needs to be revisited. State-approved harbor management plans are generally have a 5-year life to them, at which point they're required to be renewed. So the idea of going back and revisiting a harbor management plan, I think, is a pertinent thing to do. When Brian and I, we chatted about a number of things as to what would be some of the driving forces behind wanting to look at a harbor management plan, and also if it turns out that folks do want to pursue updating the plan, what would be the mechanisms for it. So I suppose what I would be interested in hearing from the larger group is what do you think are some of the things that would be drivers for revisiting or renewing a harbor plan?
We've accomplished some things that were planned,
Okay.
so that would obviously update it.
Yep.
Some of the short and long-term goals in there, the land development, the water use, questions about aquaculture, things like that. And frankly, input from the stakeholders, commercial, recreational, in the town, that probably needs a refresh, is
Okay.
just my opinion.
Okay.
And to add to that, one of the reasons for doing it is to make sure that it is, I'm not sure if our current plan is state approved.
It's not.
It's not, so I don't know what that process entails. But also just to make sure we have one in place so we can get the kind of,
Grants.
we're in a better position, I guess, to get maybe some other grants that we may move forward.
Okay. Are there any other sort of primary drivers going on?
Just to update it, refresh it, like Brian said.
Okay. So there are two trajectories a harbor management plan can take. There's either a local harbor plan, which is what the town of Scituate elected to do last time, or there's something called a state-approved harbor management plan. The primary difference between the two is that the state-approved harbor management plan is a regulatory, it goes through an actual, it goes through a review and approval process through the Secretary of EEA. So with a state-approved harbor management plan, The primary reason people do state-approved plans is they're looking to do some type of substitution or amplification for some of the requirements for Chapter 91. And I can go into that in a little more detail if folks would like. But in order to do that, the harbor management plan, the state-approved harbor management plan, is sort of a unique mechanism because they're the Chapter 91 regulations, which the State Waterways Program is implemented through Chapter 91, sort of preserves and protects public trust rights to the waterfront, as I'm sure many of you are familiar with. The harbor management planning process is a mechanism by which communities, based on the specifics of their harbor, can actually look to amend state regulation for some of these substitution and amplification provisions to Chapter 91. So because the municipality would be looking to amend state regulation, there needs to be a state process or a state regulatory process to review those, or to review and participate in those changes in order to ensure that the Commonwealth's public trust responsibilities as far as maintaining public trust for the Commonwealth at large are maintained.
So do we foresee any need to amend our Chapter 91, does anybody know?
So, well, that would be a question for the committee, or for the commission, for the town, for the public. That's one of the things that folks traditionally do as part of the scoping process. Sometimes there will be a sort of a waterfront plan or vision that folks have, and there will be sort of a Chapter 91 issue with that. Let's say it's the open space requirement or public, waterfront access issues. And they would look to go into that harbor management plan with that in mind, or if there's some other things they know they want to do. Sometimes they'll go into it saying, well, we want to take a broad brush look. Let's do this from a sort of a macro planning initiative, sort of 30,000 foot, and see where we're at. And with that, either through the public comment process or through the existing conditions. One of the things that was done last time is you do an existing condition study to see what the current conditions are, and that's both the built environment, the marinas, the waterfront, that type of thing. But it's also the environmental things, the salt marshes, intertidal flats, all of the shellfish beds, all of that type of thing. So when you see where the existing conditions are, then you can sort of see what the potential issues might be with some of the goals that might be identified during the scoping process. So if it turns out that there are some there would be some need to do some amending modifications to Chapter 91, then you've sort of done the groundwork to demonstrate what those are. If it turns out that there aren't any reasons for needing substitutions, amplifications to Chapter 91, then a community might elect to just develop a local harbor plan, the same as they would as sort of an open space master plan or any other sort of local planning document. Some communities don't find they have Chapter 91 process or Chapter 91 issues that they want to address, but they want to give the document some greater standing by having to go through a formal process that has CZM and DEP and EEA's participation in it. For things such as grant considerations or funding considerations. That being said, there is no, way back in the day, there were grants associated with completing a harbor management plan. That is no longer the case. There's no sort of pot of gold at the end of the harbor planning rainbow, so to speak. That being said, when communities come before various grant programs and they can say, we do have a harbor management plan, it's a state-approved plan, that does give the grant funders a greater level of confidence in that the plan as being presented has been fully fleshed out, scoped, what have you. So that's sort of that's sort of the two trajectories, the local harbor plan, the municipal, the state-approved harbor management plan. With a local plan, communities can either do it in-house, as Scituate did last time, or they can hire a consultant to do it, because quite frankly, a harbor management plan can be a heavy lift for doing it in-house. And sometimes folks will sort of hire a consultant to do part of the work and do some of the work in-house, and they'll sort of dovetail it like that. As far as technical assistance, the state, or the town didn't elect to do a harbor state-approved plan last time, but I participated in the process in the capacity of technical assistance, because in addition to a marine background, I also have a planning background, so the two interests sort of do dovetail. And we also brought in folks such as Scituate Waterways to just sort of prove things to make sure that nothing had been missed, that type of thing. So we can bring additional assets and resources to the table for this type of thing. As far as funding goes, the sources of funding that I'm aware of for harbor plans are pretty much the Seaport Economic Council. They are still funding harbor management plans. The town of Cohasset received funding for doing a harbor management plan in the last round of Seaport funding. So that's sort of a kind of overview of the different trajectories that folks would take. I think it makes sense because, to revisit a plan, because clearly a lot of work has taken place and been accomplished since the last harbor management plan was completed. And I think that just simply going through some initial steps, at least, of a public participation process, of going out to the public and saying, this is where we were in 2011, these were the goals and the action items, this is what's been accomplished now, this is where we're at now. Does everything that was sort of articulated in that previous plan still hold, or are there sort of, the world evolves, and are there new goals, or are there new sort of challenges, or are there things on the horizon now that there weren't back in 2011 that need to be addressed? And at least start into the process and see where, after doing some preliminary outreach, where you're at and taking the pulse of the community and sort of going from there.
So you said there was no pot of gold, but then you said the Seaport Economic Council actually does fund harbor management.
Oh, they'll fund the development of the harbor management plan.
They won't fund the things in the plan.
Right, they will
Right.
fund the development of
Right.
a harbor management
Which
plan.
is where we're at, right? I mean,
Yes,
to
yours
help,
are-
help rewrite or
Yes.
update the plan.
Yes,
Correct.
There is money for a consultant to pay from
yes.
this, and so then we have to go through that process of maybe applying for that, if we're thinking about hiring a consultant.
If we are.
But there are things that can be done sort of in-house to sort of front load that as far as sort of public
Save
outreach, that type of thing. Because it's a good, I think as part of any planning exercise, I think a lot of the credibility of that plan comes from the outreach, because that's sort of what gives it credibility. One of the things that often stymies any type of management plan is if the community feels that it was sort of done in too much of an insulated environment, and there wasn't an opportunity for public comment. That often will sort of, put folks in the position of getting a little blowback.
Right.
And I think it just, is good planning. It's just good planning process.
So in terms of, and I don't know if you can answer this question, Jason, but In terms of applying for grants, I think we were told that the plan needs to be within 10 years to be considered by the Seaport Council. Are you familiar with any timeframes such as that?
I am not.
The aging of it?
I am not.
I think that's what Jack Wigan referred to, was that you wanted to keep it within 10 years.
Mhm. So, that it should be renewed within, or revisited within 10
Yes.
years?
Yes.
Okay, that would make sense because, you know, if a planning document were to sit, or, you know, to be around for too long, the underlying conditions that informed it might have changed to the point where it might not be as relevant. So keeping a 5-year or a 10-year horizon on the planning document, make sure that what you were working with previously is still relevant to informing future actions.
Mhm.
Do you know how much money Cohasset got, by chance?
Off the top of my head, I think it was in the ballpark of like 50 or 80,000 maybe.
Yeah, that's been the experience. I've been to a number of Seaport economic development meetings, and my experience is that they'll entertain grant money to communities that don't have a harbor management plan, which is a lot of communities.
Mhm.
We were in a degree somewhat ahead of the curve by developing one here. And quite frankly, if we had to do over what I would do over them, I wouldn't have done it internally, I would have sent it out to a consultant.
Mhm.
Jack, because it's a lot of heavy lifting. Yes, the plan that we have is local, and we protect it that way, because if it became onerous, it opened up the state review, quite frankly.
Mhm.
And we were concerned with that, and given the amount of time. In other words, do we really need this? This isn't Boston Harbor. And what's the effect? And we went through with it, and there's been multiple, I think we had 2, if not 3 public hearings.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a process here. There's a lot of heavy lifting to get this done. And I think we should be proud of ourselves that we have one in place. As I said, there's a lot of communities still don't have one. Look at Cohasset, point in case. Our next door neighbors just getting around to it now.
Mhm.
So I think we have to be careful. You know, it's a good thing to have an update, but what's the really the potential rewards? We have a mandate to do something that's particularly onerous to us right now that needs to be looked at, or is this a nice to have, for lack of a better term?
Well, also, beyond the nice to have factor, there's also, you know, there are plenty of competing uses, as you all know, to any waterfront. There's a variety of users and only limited space. So this allows the town to be more proactive in where it wants to go with the harbor, rather than being reactive to whatever sort of proposal from any individual entity would be to come in. And that's something that DEP does look at when they're reviewing Chapter 91 applications. Is one of the things, if you go and do the Chapter 91 regulations are on DEP's website. If you look at those regulations and do a keyword search for harbor management plan, you'll see, I think, about 50 to 60 instances where that keyword search will pop up in the regulations as to how harbor management plans inform DEP's review of Chapter 91 applications. So that might be one thing that you would want to do to sort of get a feel for how a harbor plan has the ability to influence DEP's review of Chapter 91 applications. Also on our website, under the Port and Harbor Planning section, there's a copy of the regulations for municipal harbor plans. And it discusses the scoping process, the review process, the public participation process, all of those types of things. So regardless if the town wants to pursue a state-approved harbor management plan, if you wanted to look at the process that's articulated in those harbor planning regulations, it does provide a good model as far as public process and public participation and just planning process goes. Things like identifying the planning area, identifying, you know, any salient issues that are upcoming, plans for public outreach, that type of thing. So it in itself is a very good planning guidance document.
So if I could circle back to Howie, you've gone to a number of the Seaport Council meetings and granting. What's your impression on having a document from 2011? Are we fine? Is it table stakes to update this, or is it I just would hate to have it impact any granting applications that we have.
I agree with what Jason said. I don't see it impacting it. We have a plan in place, we can say we have one. Like you just said, the key words when some people do a review with DEP, we're gonna come up looking like we have a plan. It will show us having a harbor plan. There are communities that have nothing. So it seems to me, if you go, and I don't know this for a fact, so I'm speaking off the top of my head, but if you go to the Seaport and say, chief, we'd like to update it, we'd like some grant, and they say, wait a minute, we've got all these other people don't even have one.
Well, I would also say, I would preface it slightly differently because because again, the window, sort of the time frame for renewal of the state-approved harbor management plan is 5 years. That's sort of the planning cycle for harbor management plans. Right now, 2011 to 2017, you're already bumped out past that 5-year, 6-year window. So the plan is starting to become a little bit dated. It also is a local plan, and that does not carry quite as much weight as a state-approved plan. So, you know, but then, you know, everything's in balance. Then you also need to look at, okay, what is the relevance of the harbor management plan, the existing one? Is it still relevant? Are there still, does it still reflect the community's goals and visions and conditions where it can still serve as a good planning document to inform future actions? Because that's what you're looking to do with the plan. And maybe going through a little bit of some of those first steps of sort of charting out, this is what it said we would do. This is what we've done. Check these boxes. This is where we were at before as far as existing conditions. Maybe put a little bit of time or money into developing a current existing conditions plan, saying, okay, this is where we are now. So these are the things we said we've done. These are the boxes we've checked. This is where we were back then. This is where we are now. Okay, based on this, and then do a little community outreach, say to folks, this is where we were, this is what we said we were going to do, this is the things that we've done, these are the things that are still on the table, this is where we are now with existing conditions, these are the new issues that, or maybe there are new issues on the horizon that need to be dealt with. Get that public input that says, okay, well, either folks still by and large think the existing plan is relevant and has all the right things in it, well, stay with it. If it turns out that, okay, well, enough has changed, that we need to sort of extend that vision to address either to take into account for things that have been accomplished so far, or to address things that were not on the radar back then well, maybe it's time to, you know, revisit the plan.
Okay.
But Jason, it's not mandated that we update.
Oh, it's not mandated, no, because it's a local plan.
Right, unlike, for instance, the state open space plan, that the town has to have an up-to-date open space plan every 5 years, which we don't have in Scituate right now. That directly affects such things as brownfield grants. So here's my point, it's not mandated, open space plans are. So again, and I appreciate what you're saying, we should update, don't get me wrong, but, you know, given everything else that's on your plate, is that something that needs to be addressed now?
So I think we probably would warrant some updating what we have, as far as, you know, not an official updating, but an updating to reflect what has actually been accomplished. We got a town pier project that's been completed, which is a major part of that.
You bet.
As Howie mentioned, you know, and we did mention this before, and when the professor was here, and we mentioned it's 5 years is not a bad period of time. We're really not in a position where we are forced to update it.
No. There's nothing from a regulatory perspective or anything like that that's saying, you must do this now. There's nothing like that. Because, first of all, it's a local plan, and if the town feels that it is serving as an adequate document for guiding the committee's work, then that may be good enough. Or maybe that you don't need to do a whole-scale redo, just go back and revisit the sections that are most in need of, updating.
We looked at that a little bit, but then there's so much cross-referencing, that's where the heavy lifting.
That's true, there is. And that's because the waterfront's a really interconnected place.
All right, so to sum this up, there may be some heavy lifting. We may or may not be outside the 2011, but we do have a new town planner who unfortunately couldn't make it here tonight, who's got background in this as well, correct, Jason? He came from this CNM?
Yeah, actually,
right? Brad Washburn?
Yeah, Brad Washburn, who now works for the town of Scituate, used to be the assistant director of coastal zone management, and is an ace at Port and Harbor planning.
So we may want to engage him, bring him in, invite him to the next meeting. He was supposed to come tonight, could not make it. Bring him to the next meeting and ask him for his opinion on it, since he is the town planner.
Does he have it? Has he been emailed it? Does he have the plan? Brad?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, yeah, good.
I'm sure he has nothing else to do.
He's got nothing better to do, absolutely.
But he could act as a
So
certain
winter
guide.
plan.
I'm sure.
Right, absolutely.
So I think that sounds like a
Excellent.
good.
Jason, thank you very much.
Yeah, it's great
Great.
information.
So, thank you, Jason. Anybody have any other questions?
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you so much for coming
You're
out.
very welcome, thanks for asking me.
Yeah, no, thanks.
Very much.
All right.
If I can be of any further assistance on this or anything else, my office is literally right up the street and my door's always open. So
Thank you.
Great, thank you,
Very
Jason.
nice.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, self-river dredging, Brian?
I have a brief update. I did talk to Nancy Durfee today. So a little bit of some good news and some bad news. The good news is she expects the permitting portion to be done by the spring. The bad news is that she doesn't know how it's going to get funded, the dredging itself. The state bond limit was lowered, and so that means the bond bill I think there was an allocation in this for some dredging this October. Probably, it won't probably be there. So our thing is we'll have permits, but the funding is going to be up in the air.
And how much is the funding again, Brian? Dollar amount?
I'm not sure they haven't put an estimate on it yet. So.
Did she give you an update on the easements? Is that done?
She did. I did not get that. Like I said, I talked to her briefly, and they are bundling the two projects, or they're linking them. They're not totally linked, but they're kind of using the dredged material as part of the dune project that they're doing on North Hummerock. If the North Hummerock dune didn't go through, they'd still use the material for beach nourishment, but I did not get into getting an update on dredging. She wanted to make it to the meeting. She had a conflict, and I can invite her to the next meeting and give her a month's notice and see if she can put it in the calendar. So.
I'm a little bit concerned how we kind of brought out the fact that, we should be thinking about safety as a theme. That's going to be an issue,
Next year.
a real issue. Safety is the word.
Yeah, I think.
It's not something we can just say, okay, we'll wait 5 years and when we get the funding. I don't know what or where we're going to go, but I think something more and quicker has to be done about the dredging.
I agree. I mean, we've been really talking this now, probably 5 years that we identified as the area that was high importance because of safety and because of how low it gets there at the low tide now. But didn't we have some money that was set aside for
the engineering, I thought that
It was permitting money.
Or
I thought we had some
Like
funding set aside.
50,000 or
There was a grant, and then there was,
Right, I know
put $25,000 of my budget last year
Yeah.
into permitting.
Mike's right, there's some money in there
There's
somewhere that
there's
was
some,
left over.
there's some money,
There
but
was-
actually said
there was
it's
I don't remember the amount of
There
what it
was,
was from,
there
but
was
there was
like
money left over.
$100,000 for dredging from the C Street Bridge up to the ramp.
Yeah,
That with conjunction to Marshfield, there was that money. I don't know if there was any additional money. I thought there was some, the money that I remember was for the permitting process.
that's what I've seen, is the permitting.
Yeah, I knew there was the permanent, but I thought we had another line item that was set aside
It was, I think it was $100,000 for that C Street Bridge.
further down.
Was that 50 and 50? Was that the one where we put 50 in and Marshall put 50 in?
I don't know if it was 50,
It was a
50 or
split.
100, 100.
Yes.
But I mean, are we talking, I have no idea what dredging costs. Are we talking like $500,000 or like $5 million? Really?
Depends on how much
Well, it
dredging.
depends on how much you dredge.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
the
yeah. Obviously, but I mean, what is necessary in that area?
It's not 50, I mean, it's,
No, no, I mean,
The area that we think is the area that's really the cut there between Truant's.
the
and
big,
coming out
the
to
big
where-
bank that's coming out.
Trum's out to the number 9 in the NR.
Yeah, right. And it's not a big area, but it's still probably gonna run, just throwing round numbers around, probably 400,000 or 500,000,
I think that's what it was the last time.
right? Yeah.
That sounds
Well, like 10 years ago or something when they did it?
that
That was
sounds
probably longer than that.
Really?
That's just winging a number, but to give you an order of magnitude.
I guess the buoys got moved this year, right? Didn't, I can't keep moving the buoys.
We should put that on the agenda if Nancy comes in, because when I spoke to her recently, she said by moving the buoy, she thought everything was fixed.
Well, no, to clarify.
That was on the outside,
Yeah,
that was
that
coming
was in the
in.
mall. That
Before you
get
was
to the
in
mall.
inlet pools. That was not the number 9 in the NR building.
Yeah, Mike DeMayo and I actually had a meeting with the Coast Guard to see if we could add, I think it would be like number 3 or 3A. So, you know where that rock is?
Mhm.
Just past there, put another one further in where it
To the
opens
south.
back up again.
To
the
drop
south.
down to the south, yeah, way into that hole.
So it wasn't,
Yeah, that's
buoys
the
further in the
new
channel,
inlet
you know.
buoys, not the,
it's in the New Inlet.
yeah, not the South River, North River.
So it's when you turn to go, you know, you get those two green
That-
cans that are there. when you
because we
turn
did-
Right there.
The consultant did some surveying out there last year, and it's just that rock pile that's kind of in the way, so it kind of closes you in, and then it opens back up. So
In the new inlet.
in the New Inlet. That's why we weren't going to dredge there, because it doesn't really need to be dredged in the New Inlet.
The new inlet. I think we're focused on
Once you get around the corner into going in, you
the
make,
turn into the
you
South River.
make the turn into the South River is the problem.
So Nancy is the employee at Scituate that's really spearheading this? And so she's the only one really now that, and that's a question for all of us, I'm not sure if she's the one that, you know.
She's the one who's working on the permitting.
Right, right. Let's invite her in, it doesn't hurt to invite her.
Oh,
Maybe it's time, we gotta talk about safety for some time here. Maybe it's time for this commission to send a memo to the board of selectmen raising the concern about safety and elevating it, because maybe it's time that we work with Marshfield and our state rep, Cantwell, to see what kind of funds we might be able to.
As we get closer to the permit, that's not a
The
bad
funds were
idea.
the problem,
Yeah.
because of the bond rating with the state.
But
Well,
let's face it,
Exactly,
things
it's a
happen.
safety issue, it's gonna happen, right?
I gotta agree with Howie, I think we might have to escalate this ourselves. I know Nancy Duffy's working on it. I went to the meeting in Hammer Rock, they didn't get any good response at all about easements. So I think that's, I don't know, the way it's
So it's gonna be
structured.
more expensive to dispose of.
So I don't know if that's slowing their process down or not, but I
No,
mean, I
we would
think
just
we,
move to a different location.
Right, right.
Yeah, but your
More
focus
expensive.
isn't permitting.
Necessarily.
Your request to the selectmen is, we've got a concern about safety, here's what we've seen, we've talked about it. And that aside, she's doing her thing, that's wonderful, and maybe it's time for them to address funding issue with our state rep and company. Yeah, there's never any money to do that forever, but we know things happen.
Yeah, I
I
think
think that there's a safety concern, and you have two towns that are involved. I don't know where we stand with negotiations or discussions with Marshall. I'm just giving you some ideas.
Yeah, it's a great idea.
At least go on the record saying we've got a concern.
So we
Yeah,
should write a
I
letter,
agree.
I agree.
Yeah.
do we need a motion to move this ahead, or you just want to work on a letter and advise us what we feel?
I think we'll work on the letter, and then for the next meeting,
Put it on the agenda.
put it on the agenda, read the letter out, make sure everyone agrees
And send-
with it, and then if everyone does, then we'll.
Does anybody want to compose the letter? Any
I'll work on
volunteers?
it.
Okay. Doesn't have to be long, it just has to be to the point.
Okay, anything else on the subject?
that's it.
The North Jetty update.
North Jetty update, we have good news. The documents have been signed. Al Bangert executed the documents and they sent them back to the federal government. So the North Jetty will probably be repaired next spring, Could be
2018
early.
spring.
2018 spring.
And funding for that is,
The federal government will be paying for that.
So it
That's
won't be an
their-
engineered
it's
jetty or anything like that, just be repairing this jetty.
Repairing their jetty.
They bumped us up in the priority.
We were a priority before with Marshfield, and it just got held up with the attorneys, it got held up at town hall, and it's all been taken care
Good news.
of. All done. We haven't gotten the documents signed back. We sent, the Fed sent us the documents to sign, they were signed, they were sent back to the federal government.
And we know what happens now.
Comes right back. 2 weeks.
Okay, harbor master towing policy. I put this on here because people keep asking me what our policy is.
We have,
We talked about the NASBO.
yeah, last year, this is another thing that got pushed off last year. I presented it, and it was kind of pushed to the side
By,
by the town administrator. I'm not sure if it was, she had a lot of things on her plate with the opening of the new public safety facility or different things going on. I'm not really quite sure what the reasoning was. I sent this over to the selectman's office, and it's going to be put on the agenda for their, I believe it's the 17th this month. And that'll be the NASBO policy that was approved about a little over a year ago.
And once they approve it, you can start
Then we,
that policy.
then that's what we started.
Have you started basically pushing people off, or have we? been
We just
going
asked people if they have
Private insurance?
private towing insurance,
Yeah,
to, you know, that will go out and stand by if it's an emergency. An emergency is an
That's
emergency.
right,
It doesn't matter,
yeah,
an emergency is an emergency.
yeah.
But if it's a non-emergency, you know,
Yeah, ran out of gas.
yeah, or just something like that, and
Can't
the
start
weather's fine,
running.
and, you know,
Need to be towed from there to
get
there.
it.
okay, the mooring banding results. I
This
don't
we
think
talked
really-
about.
Yeah, we talked about it. We don't really need to have this on the agenda for this evening. Unless anybody has a question
Keep
about
talking
it.
about
yeah, I just think that the question was, if the banding was done as like a audit. and I just-
The banding was complete. We did it in the inner harbor, the outer harbor, South River, North River, all the different areas. We did it, again, to the best of our ability. It was, we were only able to get through about half the harbor last year, and it just didn't really work out very well because a lot of the numbers weren't on. Most of the numbers were. If they weren't on, we went to the side of the boat to see if they had a mooring sticker. If they didn't have that, we took the registration. And we've compiled all that information, and we're gonna work on it over the winter time.
Yeah, I just didn't know, like, especially like in the rivers, I know there are more involved down there that aren't active, nobody's been, they haven't had a vote on them.
If they had no number, they didn't get banded.
Did you, but did you write down the location, and are you looking into seeing what was there?
No,
Do you have an active charter for like mooring locations?
we do not, no,
They used to.
No. yeah. We
So
don't have
you
that.
banded every mooring and it has a number associated with it now on that band?
What we did was we took a spreadsheet and we ran 1 through 1,000, because we had 1,000 bands. So we went and started in that corner, and band number 1. Could have been mooring 25, so we'd write 25 next to it, and we'd work our way through the harbor. And whatever the number was, is what we wrote next to it. Whatever number we found on either the mooring ball, or the boat, or the registration to the boat. Because that way we can kind of go back through and look through the registrations to find out, you know, if that boat is supposed to be in this harbor, if it's not supposed to be in the harbor, if it's a Scituate registered boat, and it comes up with Keith Wallow, we look up and says, yeah, Keith Wallow's got a mooring, and we can kind of go back through and say, yeah, okay, it must be his because his mooring wasn't, you know, number 28 didn't come up, and that was his mooring number. Just picking up her name.
So I thought that the whole banning process, unless I misunderstood it, was so that we could find out if there was any moorings that were
And we
not
did,
supposed to be there. And if we didn't do that in the north and south rivers,
we banded the moorings that had numbers. Okay, so we have to go back and we have to find out what's down there.
I guess my concern is when are we gonna go back, because the season closes and
This isn't something that's gonna take a year. You know, I did this in Mashpee, it took about 4 years for this to complete. And then you just, you know, you slowly wean them out,
Meaning illegal,
the illegals.
illegal mooring.
I don't think you're gonna find really that many here, I think you're gonna find more down there.
And they're not illegal, somebody just had a mooring, they got a dock,
And they
they
could-
sold their boat, and they.
And they left it
And
behind.
they left the mooring behind, but it's, my thing is that you're clogging up the waiting list because you know, you're not managing the water as
Right.
tightly as.
Or it could be that it's not taken care of by a, you know, not on a yearly program with one of the inspectors, and he just has it, he or she has it inspected every 3 years, and the numbers just aren't on there.
But if, they need to be on. I mean,
They
that's-
need,
if you-
and
if
that's part of it.
If the mooring, if the thing, the buoy isn't, you know, it's part of the regulations. If it's
Correct.
not there, get it out of there.
Right.
So-
So we go through it, and then what we do is what we did in Mashpee, we go down and we remove it.
Or
So
at
it
least-
doesn't have a number, but I don't want to start going out because there's, you know, 50 moorings out in Scituate Harbor and start, you know, dropping moorings all over the place. If we can figure out whose they are and get a hold of them and just say, you need to get your number on there. So
Well,
we.
the moorings all start out, I think Keith will agree with me, they all start with a number on them.
We have no idea. I mean, somebody can put a
Well,
mooring
but
in the
I'm
front.
talking, Fran, that a buoy or a mooring is not being maintained, it's a dead
Yeah,
mooring.
it's been out
They're
there
not
2 years,
hard,
3
I'm not, you know, I understand, you know, they get chipped off when the boats ride up on them, but these are moorings that have been there for, you know, and you know, yes, it's not, I don't think it maybe is a few in the harbor, but it's more of a river problem.
It is, I believe it's more of a problem.
It's
But-
the phantom one.
But if you were out there tagging everything and you didn't touch the ones that you couldn't identify.
We went up to them. I wasn't there. I just, when I sent them down, I said, ban the ones that you can identify, you know, either write down the number, registration, something. And then when they came back, they said there were some that didn't have anything, they didn't know what to do.
So how
I
many,
wish they had put GPS now or something. So we could.
what number did we get up to with the bands?
Yeah, that would be.
We have to put
We
GPS on every
broke up
inspection, so.
areas. We've got into the 800s, but we don't have that many moorings because we left space in each area so that if there was 3 moorings over here that are still available, we can kind of backfill and keep those numbers kind of
And
in order
so how
when we
many
go to the
bands
number.
did you put on mooring?
It was about, I think around 500.
And so there, of those
And that's-
500, we know those people. Yeah.
Well,
It's like 660 mooring, right?
that's
That are
all
paid,
moorings were.
we think.
We still had, at the time, we still had some of the relinquished moorings that were still being
Yeah.
kind of processed out. too.
And we've,
But they should
just
be about
texted
60.
Mike to get an approximate number. He thinks he's assigned about 80 moorings.
This year to date. That's pretty good, because I thought you only had 75 or something that we were.
People
Yeah,
turn them in.
Yeah, yeah, okay, well, turn up, yeah. And then the question is, how many do we know that are not assigned? you know what I mean, as of the end of the season, which is now, that he still has, that we still know are available that are not assigned. That would be a question that maybe is more difficult to
And I
answer.
think there's always going to be some that are in fluxes. People turn to it and they turn back over.
Well, it's a control
But
thing that I think
that
you're
was
working
about the
to.
number.
You're working
Well,
towards the
fine.
control. Let's say we end up with 600 numbered moorings. If you're not sending out 600 invoices, that means that there are moorings that are not assigned. I mean, it's relatively simple.
Yeah.
With me?
I am, but there's always, things that make it more complicated.
Well, I mean, in
People turn
October,
them in,
well, invoices go out in February, something like that,
March 1st.
March 1st.
They
so-
go out and they're due April 15th, and they have 15 days beyond that with a $100 late.
Late fee, yeah.
And after that, they get reassigned to the next person on the wait list.
top of your nail.
Oh, I know a guy.
It's gonna be a tough
well,
May meeting here.
yeah.
All right, I think that's good information, Stephen. Thank you.
Okay, new business?
Just to let everybody know, once we sent out the letter that there's a $100 charge for being late, and I didn't want to have to do it this year, and it's a learning year, and I sent over the new regulation, everybody paid.
Everybody.
All but one. And they lost.
Stick them envelopes through the door, though.
Don't be late.
New business, waterways, financial review?
Yes, that's me.
I was gonna say, call it audit for lack of a better word, but that's kind of a scary word no one wants to talk about.
No, it's an audit. I'd like the board to request a line-by-line detail, almost like a journal entry from what went in and what went out of the Waterways Enterprise Fund last year. I'm assuming we ask it from Nancy Holt. And I'd like to ask one person to help me do the audit, because I think if we do more than one, we have to have a subcommittee, if I'm not mistaken. Does that sound right to everyone?
Working group.
Yeah.
Working with Rick.
Which
I'm
we don't
happy
want.
to help if anybody.
No, working group is legal, you can do a working group.
So I'd like David to help me.
Yeah, but a working group still has to be a public open meeting.
Yeah.
It's not.
It does.
It does.
I
It
don't-
does.
I don't think so.
It
I'll
does,
look at- I'll
Franny. We
check
went
it
through
out.
this.
Yeah, we had them for the mooring,
Yeah,
I
but
think
we
that
had
was-
more than two people. We had like a quorum in the room, and if you don't have a quorum, I don't think you have to do that. I could be totally wrong,
I
but
think our problem is we had a quorum.
yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
That's why I
This is
wanted
just
to get
gonna be
down to
the
like
two of
two.
us meeting
Yeah, we're.
to
Right.
talk about
Yeah.
the
No quorum.
report that Nancy or Ellen provides us.
Alan doesn't
Yeah.
provide,
No,
Nancy
it would
would
be
provide.
Nancy.
Still call it work.
And if we can get it within the next week or so, which I think they should be able to provide, then we can have a report back for next week.
Keith, are you going to else?
I wouldn't
I
call
can help you
it,
any way, let me know.
I wouldn't call it an audit going in to ask for it though.
Huh?
I wouldn't call it an audit going in to ask for it, you can just go in for
It's
it.
public record, we can ask for what we want.
Yeah, just call it financial information.
She's gonna give us a dump that we'll have to turn into a spreadsheet.
Right.
Yeah,
She's
just
got,
don't.
she's got.
A list of expenditures.
Well, it's both. I want to see incoming and outgoing, so we can see what's been going on.
Red line
last
listed.
year.
Fiscal year or you have certain dates?
Let's do last fiscal year.
Just so you guys know, last year we were collecting mooring fees throughout
So
the
here
whole
come the
year.
excuses
No,
that are
just
already coming out.
because you're gonna see more money in this year than last year, because we got that, money, the chunk of money.
Okay.
So that means the enterprise fund should be higher at the end of the year this year.
For this year, and then it'll do this, and then it's gonna kind of go back to, somewhat.
That's if you're looking at totals, but you're looking at line items supposedly, right?
Correct.
Well, I don't know whether, accounting wise, I'm not an accountant, but whether you count as revenue when you send the bill out or not. A lot of businesses do that, and then it becomes
No, it's cash accounting.
Yeah,
cash.
cash or accrual.
It's just something I don't think we've done in the years that I've been here,
Yeah,
which
sure.
is like 100 now. And I just think it's something we should do. We should probably do it every year going forward. And it's not that we don't trust anyone, or we don't think anything funny's going on, but
Well,
it
you
would
don't
just
like
be
my new
nice-
car?
It would just be
Yes.
nice to know what happens, and if the enterprise fund is going down, is there a reason it's going down, or it's going up?
You can pay for that.
Just be good to know.
You know, there might be a situation where we need more money at a point in time because of something like the South River. Maybe grants are not gonna be there forever, you know, so.
Well, maybe it's a way to justify, we've talked about upping the slip fees and upping the mooring fees or whatever, and the argument always is, we have to have a reason why we're gonna do that. Well, if the enterprise fund is diminishing, then there's a reason to do so, as long as it's a legitimate reason and it's legitimate money.
Right, I mean, I hate raising fees,
So we don't raise fees unless, we'll talk about it, we wouldn't recommend it.
but I know our costs have gone up over the last 10 years, somebody said 10 years or so.
Be
It Came up.
11 now.
When it became $100 a foot,
No, I think it's 2004.
so
It went
13.
down.
So in any case,
Our fees went down on this side in 2004,
I think that's when this became.
and it hasn't come, they haven't gone up since.
See, but what I'm hoping for from them is these
Yeah.
line items that show up as like $8,100,
Yeah,
that they can give me a breakdown of what actually was in that line item.
right.
You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
we can code things anywhere we want and do whatever we want with stuff, but what is it really?
Yeah.
So that's what I'm hoping I'll get. And I know it's gonna be this long and.
Right, she's probably gonna start off by giving you these ones here, which she can pull right out of.
13 numbers or
Right.
15 numbers.
Right, by the
Yeah, but
accounts,
then they need
right?
to be broken down.
And we can request specific line item details.
Yeah.
I mean, some we might not need, office expenses.
That's just,
you know.
the last time we
we
did
don't
this,
care.
Keith, was probably a year and a half ago. And that's what we had pulled, right, from that, so give you an idea of what's, some of the stuff that's available.
And I think if you're looking for anything different than that, you have to be very specific on what you want.
Right.
Yeah, just copy from you. Good.
So you guys are set with that?
I think so. You good?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay, hurricane and storm planning. We used to, many years ago, I know, have a hurricane or storm plan for the marinas. It wasn't written, it was informal. Steve and I talked a little bit about it, and there are obviously some drawbacks. Is it worth our while to put together a hurricane or storm plan for the town marinas?
You guys can do whatever you think we should have.
What we used to have, it used to be everyone was required, when there was a named storm or any kind of a situation up, that they would put their anchor and make sure their lines were free on their deck. And the harbor masters used to run them out and on the perimeter of the marina, not inside, but the perimeter of the marina, as an extra. We had a mooring, we have a block and tackle system, so it needed help. And that's what this did, it helped it. But we also have the problem of the fishermen coming around the corners and running over the lines.
Also, you have a problem with the tenants, which we did 2 years ago. I think some of the guys ran out some anchors, and we had tenants that ran over the lines, and they're trying to run their boats over to the ramp in the weather, and then they lose power.
Well, is it something you think we should consider, trying to put together a formal
I
hurricane
think-
storm plan?
What I've seen, like what other towns do, is we're trying to put together email lists so we can send out blast emails.
Excellent.
And what we do then is send out an email, hey, there's a storm coming, we advise that, we strongly advise that you remove your boat from the marina, or you double check your lines, you come down and, you make adjustments, and, a lot of the insurance companies, if it's a named storm, will pay, one way. So they'll pay to remove your boat from the water. They won't pay to put it back in. Some insurance companies don't insure your boat unless you take it out of the water. And I don't think people really, kind of wrap their arms around that.
I
So
think
what,
this was probably me too. I spoke to 3 other harbor masters in the area and asked them what they had for hurricane plans,
Yeah.
only because of what just happened, and I was behind the ball, obviously, but they said, oh, it's right here. I tell everyone what to do when it happens. So I was like, well, if that's what we do too, maybe we should have something in writing that we can say, here's a plan, and you know it's gonna change a little bit when things are happening.
Falmouth.
there, but
Falmouthville, actually, they have new docks down there, and Greg Fraser sends out an email that if it's a named storm, and he will order everyone off the docks. And it's just part of doing business down there.
I mean, things like us being out there in the storm, trying to put lines on and stuff, maybe that's part of the whole plan, and everyone needs to know that they need to have an extra line on their boat. I mean, they should already know that, but how many boats didn't in this last storm? That
A lot.
lasted 4 days.
There are, you know, I think in your email blast, there are a laundry list of things you
Yeah.
need to remind people, because when I look around, like the harbor, the river, what people, you know, it's, you know, you have a tropical storm coming up, bimini tops up, no extra lines,
Yeah.
no extra fenders, you know.
We had people where I came from forgot that they went to Florida. They're gone.
Just don't do it.
We found a 30-foot Grady White sunk, in the Papaneset Creek. Called him up, and he's like, oh yeah, I forgot all about that.
That's nice. to have quick.
He didn't really seem that upset either.
Yeah, well, and that's,
It's a newer,
but you need to,
Want to change the color.
you know, you need to have, I think you need to have a plan, you need to tell people, put
Well,
extra lines on.
that's what we did where I came from. We had a mooring list, and we'd send out a blast email, and it would say, the storm trajectory is this. We advise that you either check your boat, check your lines, put a second mooring line on, put a safety pennant on. Just a little to-do list.
I think I was in Marion last year, and there was a storm coming out, and I was trying to get back from Nantucket. But I was lying in the bee berth, it was 7 o'clock in the morning, and the harbor master came around, and he was up there adjusting the chafe gear on the, because he just thought the boat was
Ask
gonna be-
Keith.
But I mean, this was 3 days before, 2 days before the storm. But I mean, they had a plan and they were acting on it. But I think you need to educate them, you need to educate them, and you need to educate them. And then when storms come, you guys need to have a list of things that you call, and people saying, hey, we used to go around and look at people's chick gear. Hey, call this guy, his pennant's a mess.
It's common sense stuff, but it ought to
Yes,
be-
but a lot of people have just got a lot of other things going on in their,
Still need
they
to
just
jam.
kind of, maybe this is their
that's
thing in the summertime, and it's now fall, and they're running around with their kids.
Will the
It's kind of
docks
to
be
get
in
all
better
up.
shape once they're piled for a hurricane, to be able to deal with a hurricane?
That's what I'm hoping.
You're still gonna have the concerns with, boats are still gonna be moving
Yeah.
a lot.
May
The
affect
other
our
problem
pilots.
is, they have a little more give with the block and tackle system, although block and tackle system isn't as steady. But I think boats could beat up a lot worse in a piling situation.
Really, boats do. Yeah.
Well,
That
they jar a little bit more, but the marina generally
The
stays.
marina stays in better shape, but the boats.
That's a communication, part of the issue is, hey, these docks are not moving, your boat is gonna be banging around,
Yeah.
FYI.
We want to think about putting together some kind of an informational board
I
blast.
said maybe someone could volunteer to kind of look at what some other harbors have.
You don't need to reinvent the wheel. Boat US, a short towboat, or Scituate has stuff. I mean, there's a lot of information on what to do when a hurricane comes in from, down south. Some of it doesn't apply, but a lot of it does.
Email blast is a great idea, it should be
Yeah,
frequent.
yeah.
Hey, it's coming, come down and look
Yeah,
at it.
the
And
town
then-
does a great job with all that stuff, lately, the town's blast.
Can you get on there?
No, I've signed up for a system, so we're all set. We're just waiting for the emails to come in. We're gonna send over a Excel spreadsheet, and it'll be loaded. So get it all squared away. This is another winter project.
Yeah.
Okay. Discussion items. We started talking about the rehabilitation project. Were there any other questions that we have?
I'm not sure, you maybe can't talk about this or not, but what is the issue with Mill Wharf Marina? And I don't want that in the long run to come into conflict with our permits and all that stuff. Do you see that being a conflict?
No, our marina's gonna go where it is licensed to go. There's a permit. I can't, if they permit it here, I can't put it there. Not allowed to.
Right.
It's where it's permitted.
Think of the same thing that happened,
TK's.
with the, God, I can't think of it, with the bar down the harbor where they had to move the thing.
There's TK's marina.
Yeah, TK's, because
Yeah.
you're permitted for an area, that's
Yeah.
it. There's no,
And does he have a beef still or not with the new plan? Do you know?
So you'd have to ask him.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, obviously, he was here at the meeting. I just don't, again, I'm bringing it up because I don't want us to stumble in this process because there's somebody challenging our permit, I guess, is the way to say
It's
it.
a good question, I think it's above our level here. It's-
right, they
Yes,
would
he's got a lawyer
would challenge the chapter 91
Permit.
permit.
Yeah, but
Not.
he's got a lawyer involved, and they're probably already talking to our town council, I would assume,
Yep.
and it's nothing that we're gonna be able to deal with. So I think the lawyers have to do their thing, and it's nothing to do with us, just my opinion, but,
No, I think you're right. Hopefully it won't.
and I hope it's
impede our progress
fixed. We
with
don't
that.
wanna,
Don't look at me, Frank.
I mean, we want it fixed so that it's the right way when the thing goes in there, but I don't think it's our.
Right.
Yeah,
But
he's a
got-
neighbor.
He's got a permit in,
We have a permit.
Correct.
right, and they both say, from what I understand, 40.5 feet, right? So it's just a matter of making sure that 40.5 feet is there
Yeah.
when the new marina is put in place.
And that was the scope that our
Pilot is put in
consultant
place.
said, yeah.
Yeah. So if it's outside of that, he's looking for something different then.
Yeah, I have no idea what he's looking for, but I know
Right.
he was, here, concerned.
Just hopefully it won't get in the way of our permitting and our projects.
Mm.
I don't think so.
Mike LaRusso, you mentioned the Ant Hill Park and public safety.
Yeah, because it's closer to me, and one of the other things that I like to do on this committee is talking about things that aren't down the harbor. The accessory boat ramp that's
Mhm.
located across from Widow's Walk,
Yeah.
in vernacular called the Ant Hill. One of the things that Steve and I talked about was trying to enhance it, regulate it better, get some better use. One of the problems now is that there is a boat ramp there, and everybody parks their cars with a sign that says no parking, and I go there and I take pictures, and I have a bunch of them. And I know Steve met with some people for some other design enhancements for public safety, and I'll turn it over to him.
Yeah, I had the state DMF come down, fishing and boating access, and we started out at Jericho, at the Jericho boat ramp, because the light poles are rotted down at the base, so I'm trying to get the fishing and boating access to replace those. So we looked at those, we talked about what we can do. I pointed out some of the issues in the parking, at the ramp itself, where the asphalt is getting torn up as you go up the ramp. We walked the parking lot, so they're putting together they were originally gonna do just a small portion. Now they're looking to come in and do a kind of a complete redo of that parking area and the lights, rather than everything other than the floats themselves and the concrete ramp. Because they deemed it, needing to be replaced or updated. So they said it's gonna take a little bit longer because of funding, but they felt it was the best way to go about it. After that, I took them over to what you call the Ant Hill.
What is the name of that parking lot? Is that a name?
The Driftway
Yetkin Park, so?
parking area, I'm not really sure.
What was it called?
Conservation Park.
Yeah.
So we looked at that ramp, and I said, it's used by, boaters, it's used by a lot of kayakers, paddleboarders, canoes, but also by small boats going out to the spit. They have some interest in doing some work to it. We talked about putting a small pier with a ramp, with a float, and having having a harbor-master boat on
Right.
one side of the float and having the other side so that people can access their boat. And the reason for the harbor-master boat is, if, you know, we need to get down the river for some particular reason, we can get down there without having to go on the outside if it is, you know,
Right.
not
We-
great weather.
We get called to salvage or rescue vessels, not people, and we utilize that. And one of the concepts that I talked to Steve was wouldn't it be great if there was a pier, ramp, or a dock that if somebody got injured on the spit or something, that there is, because that's where the public safety people come, that then they can go.
Fire truck, you know, the ambulance
Fire
could
trucks.
show up. It would, you know, Mike and I talked about like a small 16-foot, like a rigid bottom inflatable, something simple to get us out
Control the rivers.
to, you know, that would just stay in the river or rivers, and it would get us out there more quickly than
Yeah.
if we had to, if the weather was really poor, also it would cut
It-
down on response time.
Right, and it's one of those things where if it ever got built, it's one of those things where you never want to use it because you don't want somebody to get injured, you don't want
Yeah.
somebody to get.
I also showed them, when I was down there, the old Scituate, concrete, I guess Scituate concrete pipe.
Citrus sand and gravel.
Sand and
Scituate
gravel.
sand and gravel.
Yeah, and they use that as a fish pier, and they looked at that, and so they're gonna come back with a couple of proposals, something to redo that, and something to redo that parking area as well.
Sorry, Steve, who was this?
The fishing, Commonwealth of Massachusetts, fishing and boating access, the same people who did Jericho Road boat ramp.
That's great. And obviously the parking issue, you know, you can even,
Well, it's not a parking issue, it's really, you couldn't get a public safety vehicle, and then, Brandon might notice this, that every once in a while on a Sunday, people detach their trailers and leave them all over the place, and then
Put them
eventually
on the
somebody.
other side of the rock.
Put them on the other side of the rocks, and then they're strewn over there, and you could never get anyone there, and then somebody calls the Scituate PD, and then they go and they tow them. It's, you know, you might as well, you have signs, you might as well have rules, you might as well enforce the rules.
Did you show him the Cole Parkway ramp?
We did, we went over and looked at that as well. So they looked at all three of them. We didn't spend as much time over there because it came down in buckets and thunder and lightning that day.
Yeah, I mean,
We were pretty soaking wet by the time we.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big, for a little improvement, it could be
Yeah.
useful.
Yeah.
The biggest issue with Cole Parkway is when the state takes over these ramps, they need to have X number of parking spaces for every 10, you know, whatever, however many thousands of dollars they spend, they have to have a number, they have a number in mind of spaces. We did talk about over there, you know, car top parking spots or, you know, parking spots. They asked if, you know, if there was a parking space that was available, if the car could pull through and leave the trailer in. You know, these are all questions more the selectmen would have to answer.
Yeah, obviously a ramp,
Yeah.
it needs a big parking lot with the trailer and stuff.
Yeah, but over at the Cole Parkway one, they, you know, they understand that it's a lot of the smaller boats and canoes and kayaks.
Howie?
I had 2 points. One is Conservation Park, so everyone knows, was set up that way with blocks due to a conservation restriction. There was a big hoo-ha, I can't tell how many years ago, I had just been elected the chairman of this board. My first meeting was a blowout with people that wanted, fishermen wanted to fish, and the fact they had put blocks across the parking lot, you couldn't park anything there.
Right.
Just so you're aware of that, I don't mean to sound like I'm throwing cold water.
No, and
Conservation drove the truck.
That, the person who did that is no longer with the town.
The conservation is conservation as far as the restrictions in the property, that's what you have to be aware of. I'm just saying, you might want to.
you mean for pilings for the new.
Well, it doesn't, it's not gonna cost us anything to have the state bring a proposal down.
That's right.
Right.
The state doesn't trump conservation necessarily.
No, I'm just saying, it does, but it does,
So just be aware, I'm just saying, be aware.
if they bring us down a proposal, we can present it and find out if there are conservation issues.
It was a big deal. The other thing is, did we look at the ramp that's over in Humrock?
Webster Street ramp?
I don't think, I think it's a public ramp, but I think it's private
It's
property.
a
It's public access, but it's
It's on the end of a private road.
Right.
And there's no parking.
But my point is, we wanted to improve that ramp, if I recall. As a matter of fact, the gentleman on the condo is going to do that. I'm just saying, did we remember that we need to take care of the people in Humrock with their access to the water there?
Isn't that part of his mitigation?
It was.
Yeah.
It's part of his order of conditions, and I believe that he might have went down with a backhoe and scooped up some mud. And,
Said it was done.
He put in the drainage too, he fixed the drainage beside it also, that was washing it up.
We just want to lose track of people around Humrock having need access.
yeah.
These are all harbor management.
Do we want
Right.
the state to have control of all the ramps? I know the state keeps coming up, but is it something that we might want to?
Franny, all I'm doing is bringing people around and bringing proposals back to the town.
Because they already own.
Well, certainly,
That's all.
Obviously Jericho improving that, I mean, that.
That's huge.
Jericho,
That's huge.
Jericho,
It's already one of their
that's already
areas.
theirs.
So, yeah.
It-
Right.
It's ours, but we manage it, but it's a state program. It-
Yeah,
They-
we've long lost
That's
control
gone.
of that, yeah.
That's gone. They don't come back. Some towns opt not to get involved with the state. Other towns can't get rid of their boat ramps fast enough. Just depends on, you know, how the town feels about it.
So that's the only one the state owns right now in town?
There's question whether they actually own the one in Cole Parkway, because we went back, you know, when we were doing the lighting project, because DMF paid for the replacement lights. I got a grant last year to replace all the lighting in Cole Parkway to LED. And when they reviewed, it looked like the state had built that ramp back in like the 50s or 40s.
Didn't get him out here to fix it.
Discussion items, Keith, you had something?
Last pump out day in the river will be 10/10, which we usually do Mondays, which is the 9th. That's a holiday, so I asked the guy to go out on the 10th. The reason we're doing that week is because the 15th is usually the last day we do it, and the 16th is that following Monday, so if I can't pump the stuff out here, I'm not gonna bring it home with me, so. So the 10th will be the last day out there, if anyone wants to let everyone know. This is kind of a question we can have for discussion for the next meeting, if you go on there, but is there a reason this building doesn't stay open for the winter? And don't tell me the pipes freeze, because there's 100 houses right around here that the pipes don't freeze. So there's a way to make these pipes so they don't freeze.
No, this place was winterized. Pipes were winterized.
So why is it closed for the winter?
I can tell you,
Okay.
because when they were winterized and they were heat wrapped, all the pipes work, and then when the power went out, in one of the storms 3 winters ago, all the pipes burst because there was no power here for the heat tape to heat the pipes. So after that, someone had decided that it wasn't prudent to leave it open in the wintertime.
Why would we want it open? To still rent out or to
Yeah.
use for revenue? You know?
And for our use, we get it.
You go to that little small room over in the corner
Yeah.
over
It's a
there.
nice room.
It's a nice
It is,
one,
it's
I
very
like it.
nice, but it
Hard
holds
to
like
find.
15 people. But I mean, there's people that want this place year round, so I don't see why we close it down. And is it really prudent? I mean,
I think it
something
was-
happened one time, is
I
that?
think Mark made the call, and I think they had to redo the floor and stuff, and after that, he said.
Yeah, it was a lot of damage from it.
Yeah, that was a bad winter, though. That was
I don't know, just something to think about. I mean, I just don't know why we closed it, so.
that was the year that all the marinas got destroyed. It was
Yeah.
that really.
Yeah. And then, last thing is the boatyard. Have we got that all squared away, so we're actually gonna have parking and be able to get in there?
Yes, that's all been squared away.
Okay.
That was taken care of last
Just want to
spring.
check now before they get their boats in there.
He is jamming them in, they're like inches apart.
He can do whatever he wants on his side.
How many boats do you have used, John?
Not sure, he's gonna do some, so the revenue will be down.
Yeah, that's, no.
All that's up. One more thing, we're planning on, when Cole Parkway, when the marinas close, when we start breaking them down, We're planning on pulling the fingers out and putting them in the parking lot, and the floats will come over in groups over here and be chained off, and then de-iced over on this side.
The de-icers in, yeah?
No. No.
They come in after the piling, right?
No, we already have pilings here,
Oh, here, okay.
here.
So the
They're going on a
de-icers are
trip.
watered? Or,
No, not
You're on
yet. I've just sent them out to bid.
okay. How many are you getting?
I believe we have 48 of them, 47 of them for the side. Whatever the manufacturer recommended.
So, because there'll be more than the size of the marina here, because there'll be more docks here.
It's not gonna, shouldn't.
Should affect the number that
No,
you need.
because we're de-icing the area.
Right, it's the overall area, not the number of six.
Somebody asked at the last meeting if we had insurance for the floats, just.
We do.
You said we do, right?
Yes, I checked with Michelle. I actually sent it to Nancy Holt, she sent it to Michelle, and Michelle said whether they're in or out there, insured.
Anybody else? We got Officer Brendan McCauley with us tonight. Anything you'd like to say? Over here.
For the end.
The last month's been pretty uneventful. Did very little storm damage for the town, but we'll call it hurricane, trouble, storm, whatever you want to call it. So, unit's been training. We went up to Boston a couple of weeks back, and we did some training with our Metro Mobile Maritime Special Response Unit on vessel pursuits and felony boat stops, boarding vessels while on the way, things of that. The scuba side, I just trained a couple of times last month. Metro Scuba's coming to Scituate on the 10th to do a dive here, probably a minor, something like that. So, continue to train, things are going well.
Anything else? Motion to adjourn?
First.
Second. Thank you.